So you've decided that you want to become a designer in an ad agency, and you're thinking to yourself, shit, what now? Well, in this episode, I talked to Rakesh Chadee, a design director based in London, who has a rich repertoire of both clients and agencies, such as Digitas, Iris Worldwide, and We Are Social, and has worked on clients such as Adidas. So he has a pretty good idea of what it takes to be a really good designer, and it's an episode filled with all kinds of practical tips and tricks that aspiring designers can use to get ahead today. He specifically asked me to meme the shit out of this, and I've done just that. So please like, share, and subscribe, and as always, enjoy the episode.
I am Rakesh Chadee. I'm a design director and creative strategist. I've worked in the creative industries for well over a decade, focusing primarily on digital, so that's covering web, app, games, social, and everything in between.
What's been your journey? How did you start off?
It's actually a good story. So I graduated from the University of Westminster and doing graphic information design, which is now communication design. At the end of the year, we got the opportunity to exhibit at D&AD New Blood at the actual festival, and I picked up a few business cards. And the agency that did pick me up was Digitas. There was a guy called Maurice Clark. He was creative services at Digitas London. I nearly didn't get an internship. So he came over and was talking to my closest friend, Ahmed, who's also, he's one of the fellow D&AD judges that we mentioned just before this call. And he looked at Ahmed's work, and Ahmed really sold it. And I was like, oh God, like I need this opportunity to sell myself too. Otherwise he's just going to walk away and that could be it for me. And just as he was leaving, Ahmed caught eyes with me and he was just like, you should really talk to this guy over here and see his projects too. And then that was it. So I presented, gave my best sales pitch as a graduate. And then in a few months' time, I got a call. We both did actually, to represent our work internally. And then we both landed internships.
Did we just become best friends? Yep.
And from there, mine got extended month by month. It lasted about 8 months in total, which is longer than usual. But it was because different technicalities. Apparently they weren't hiring at the time. So when it got back around to the beginning of the new financial year, I bagged a junior contract and I was in. But I knew everyone, so it was perfect.
You know, looking at your LinkedIn, you've had an impressive history at, companies such as Iris, Facebook, We Are Social, working on some pretty big brands. For you, like, with any career highlights?
I have one absolute highlight, and it was actually during my time at Iris. So we pitched and won for the KFC account. It was originally CRM, and we expanded the remit into a broader digital remit. I was on the pitch team, which meant when we won it, I got to lead it from a design perspective, and I was buddying up with the creative teams. The creative director. It was really fun. The account team was really tight as well. There was a lot of good communication. Often designer, account team relationships can be a bit dicey because of the time pressure for both departments, and you don't necessarily see the same vision because you're coming from different executional points of view. But the team were just in sync. We knew each other's strengths and weaknesses. Knew when to play someone in when they were necessary in front of the client especially. But one thing we did do as a team was really bring the client on board to what we wanted to create. We're really explicit about what we wanted to do, how it answered the initial strategic brief. And if there were any executional questions, I was able to tag in and take a lead in a presentation and take the pressure off the account team and the strategists. And it just worked really well. It was a well-oiled machine and really enjoyable. I say this so happily because in comparison to not really knowing what all these departments mean when you move into the industry for the first time, you realize what all the cogs do and how you can get them to work in your favor as a designer. You would never think, let me befriend an entire account team and see how it goes when you're new. They're kind of giving the briefs and the instructions, and you're not sure what this relationship is. But as you move further, you realize they're actually in with the client. They've got a good relationship. They know what they're thinking. So as a designer, not many do. It's really smart to start conversations with them because then you can understand what's really required, and then you've got a broader space as a designer to express yourself, try versions to please that client directly, but within reason directly, and also have your account team on board as part of your creative vision. It just makes everything so much more enjoyable. I'm babbling on because I had such a good time. Again, from really cool social games, social content, experimental ECRM. We jumped on a theme of gamification. We realized our main target audience was quite young. So we tapped into gamification and also trying to link into like the campaign KPIs. So knowing we had to promote a certain product that was being released, how do we do that creatively? It was a fun, creative, collaborative environment, and it's probably going to be one of the best highlights I've had in my entire career. But to add on to it, totally different experience. Working at Facebook Creative Shop was pretty awesome. It was a bit more hands-off and more consultancy based. So working directly with C-suite clients and in-house teams directly to build out creative campaigns across different formats, pushing format innovation and creative strategies. It was a nice way to be a little bit more geeky and really sell innovation to them. So that I'd add that in as well. Those are the two best, I'd say.
Yeah, it really is interesting to see that you've started obviously your career in design, but then have moved into gamification, and really it's become less about design in a traditional sense, but more about I guess human-centered design and what really makes people tick and what people really enjoy. And I think I really enjoyed your point earlier that you made about the accounting, because that's what I do. About thinking. So yeah, if you want to come to Australia, you're more than welcome to pop down. But I agree. I think, you know, as a junior coming into the industry, especially in you know, design capacity, it is very important to ask questions beyond the briefing. Your actual briefing doesn't mean you have to get everything there and then. There's nothing to stop you from having a coffee with the account team or the account person to just say, look, I just want to interrogate this a bit more. I want to understand why this is like this. And a good account person will answer that and should have an answer for that. So no, I really appreciate that. It's almost a little bit sometimes worrying when you brief someone and they walk away and you go, okay, is everything okay? You didn't ask any questions. It's good to ask questions, right?
Yeah. So what I found from management experience and mentoring too, most designers that I've worked with, and this isn't generalizing, there are a lot of introvert characters that don't necessarily feel confident enough to ask those questions because they don't want to look like they don't know the answer. But the truth is, no one knows all the answers. Even at my level, I don't have all the answers, and I ask questions all the time. And I'm not afraid of looking like I'm not informed on things. It's actually the opposite. You're hungry to find out deeper information to get it right sooner and more effectively. I got asked recently what's a key piece of advice you would give a junior designer. Break it in, keep asking questions. You're there to soak it up. You're not expected to know how this machine works. So yeah, the more you ask, the more you learn.
A wise person embraces as many new experiences as possible.
When you're just starting your career, there is no harm in asking questions. When I was talking to Beth Friedman on this podcast, she said the most dangerous thing you can do is say yes to something that you don't know. A lot of designers are considered T-shaped people, so they kind of have a specialty, let's say, in conceptual design and craft, but then can branch out into UX. You know, in your experience, design thinking as well, and other areas. What do you think are the key sort of skills that up and coming aspiring designers need to focus on?
Everything's moving towards social. Yes, traditional comps still exist, and they're doing the job they've always done, and even better with the new kind of breed of creative that's out there. But with everything moving into social, in-feed and, for example, if we're talking about Instagram, in-feed and story impact is coming through motion because it creates a kind of emotive engagement through the use of movement. I'm getting really artistic with you, but the need for that multidisciplinary designer has gone up. So those traditional graphic design skills, which have been sought after for years, still necessary. If you can make that stuff move, even better. We all use social media, and I think everyone tries to claim that they're a social media expert because we use it all the time, but understanding the ins and outs of the platform and how to get people kind of hooked in. There's a level of design psychology, like you said, design thinking that goes into it too. And I think the more people or designers are practicing within that realm, the more they'll understand the hooks and the design tricks you can use to create effective design. To answer your question though, multidisciplinary skills will go a long way today, especially if you're freelancing too. It just means you get more jobs on the table.
Yeah, Yeah. I have a friend of mine, I had lunch with him yesterday. He's a graphic designer by trade, but he's also branched further into finished art and artworking and managing studios and going like that. And the guys that, hot property, to your point, is you say you have that core skill base, and then I guess just follow what interests you, right?
Just reminded me of a particular designer that I've worked with. So again, you don't have to learn everything. You're drawn towards skills that kind of inspire you and you want to learn and express yourself doing those things. And of course, knowing those skills on the job will make the job way more fun and rewarding for you as a designer. There are some designers who are just absolute sponges and they just want to learn every new piece of software, and they do it. And even I look at it and I go, I wasn't like that when I was coming up through the ranks. I did what I did well, and every now and again I'd wander out and try something new. But something new comes out, they're learning it. They're doing those online tutorials.
Hell yeah. I know Kung Fu. Show me.
And next thing you know, in a couple of months, they put their hand up for a brief and saying, yeah, I know how to do this now, so let's give it a go. And they absolutely smash it. So that hunger to learn more goes a long way as well. But then at the same time, you get the seasoned pros who know their particular craft inside out, a particular set of skills, and the competition is second to none in terms of their ability as well. So it goes both ways.
You came through D&AD New Blood, and you got an internship, did great, career went on from there. You're now at the other side of the spectrum where you're judging people coming through. A two-part question. One is, what are the successful candidates doing? But then two, what are some of the pitfalls that you're seeing some of the candidates do, and how can they be avoided?
The entries have been really interesting because a lot of the entrants have been putting their personal spin on the briefs to answer them coherently. But what does make a successful entry is something that ticks off that criteria that's set out. So I think the three key elements we were judging against were: how well has this been executed? How well did it answer the challenge on the brief? And also, I think it's how well it answers the audience insights that were given out. And then there was a sub-criteria to that. But what we found the most successful entries did was they went beyond that brief. So they did match that criteria amazingly. And some of those projects look like they could have gone out live as campaigns tomorrow if we had the budget.
Awesome.
But some in particular just exceeded expectations creatively. It's almost, they took a product spin and made an idea that genuinely hadn't been released yet. And you're thinking, wow, you're a graduate and you've just come up with that. There are some creatives that take a couple of years to get to that point. And you're wondering, like, how amazing is the talent out there? When you get that spark feeling about an entry and an entrant, in your back of your head, you're wondering, you need to contact this person once they get their award, because they could be a new star junior for any agency.
Yeah, brilliant. And I guess at the other side of the spectrum, what are some of the things that pop up and haven't quite hit the mark?
It's down to just straying away from the brief, getting carried away with the theme that they've chosen. And in other instances, it is down to the execution, because execution covers visual, but also conceptual narrative. How have you submitted that case study? What story are you telling? And as you tell that story, back to your original point, how are you ticking off these the different criteria that are essential to a great submission? It's nothing too mysterious. It's just about being direct, coherent, but also kind of bending the creative remit of what is asked of you as part of that brief too.
So, Kesh, what are your thoughts on having a mentor in the creative industry, especially as a designer?
It took me a while to understand the importance of having a mentor. I didn't even know I had them when I was moving up. They're essentially designers or experienced creatives that take you under their wing, pass on the information that probably is going to take you a few years to understand yourself well in advance to help you navigate the industry, one from a craft perspective, but two from a business perspective and understanding the industry you're in. Mentoring is something that's really close to me.
No such thing, bad student, only bad teacher.
I take it really seriously and try and give back as much as I can, especially coming through the D&AD exhibition. and then eventually ending up in the industry, I feel like there's a need to give back to that particular organization. I've been part of the New Blood Shift mentoring scheme. I think a year ago I was part of that, and that was amazing. It was working with creators from diverse backgrounds who don't necessarily have a degree, and helping them with the client briefs that are actually part of the program, where they go to different agencies, get briefed on different brand briefs, and they respond to it. So essentially helping them with their coursework, but also answering their queries and questions about the industry. What's it like once they get in? As part of the experience, they're also going into places, visiting and seeing how things are run, getting exposure to it. But your role as a mentor is to fill in the gaps of what they've seen, so they have context and understand that experience. I'm going on a bit of a tangent as well. For the past few months, inspired by my kind of dipping my toe into mentoring, I've been doing a bit of independent mentoring too. I wasn't sure, at a certain point, I wasn't sure if I wanted to take coaching qualifications, and I looked into that and been to a few seminars. It's something that I'd really like to move into later. So what I did was I trialed a little pilot scheme where I contacted a few people who were reaching out to me anyway and said, hey, let's formalize this a bit. Let me offer you a bunch of experience that I've got for absolutely free, help you rebuild your portfolio and try and break into the industry. And it went really well. So it comes from setting goals with the mentees, what they want to achieve, the type of place they want to end up in, the type of work they dream of doing, shaping their portfolio, their website around that work, from the images that are laid out chronologically, what story they're telling for each project case study, and the little synopsis that goes with it, making sure that the right keywords are highlighted, and a prospective employer will read that and go, oh, they're speaking industry language, I understand this project. So giving them the one up to try and get closer to the prize of that job. And then just through word of mouth, recommendation to recommendation, I've ended up with 8 in the last 3 months or so, which is amazing. Again, a really diverse bunch from different backgrounds. I found that, not to be too controversial, I found that a lot of ethnic minorities are gravitating towards me in particular. And that says a lot about the industry, I think, in the sense that I think we need to see more leaders from different backgrounds to be able to answer the personal questions as well of the up and coming talent, because we all know that industry's had a bit of a problem, and it's been called out a lot in the last couple of years. And I don't think it's too difficult or too contentious to address. I just think we need to put the right models and the right role models in the spotlight so people can go up to them comfortably and get the information they need. It's something that I found throughout my career as well. A lack of role models is always, it's really nice getting information from generous people, but there's something different when someone comes from your walk of life, almost your cultural upbringing too. There's a different type of emotional connection which takes your professional journey on a totally different tangent, and it just enriches your perspective and experience of the industry. I think the future is going to be great. I think there's more and more people standing up, putting their hand up to offer that leadership that might have not been there before. But I'm confident that the next 5 years or so is going to be groundbreaking for that.
You know, you're on the same mission as me to help Pete's break into advertising. Kesh, where can people find more info about you and reach out to you?
I'm about to drop some promo, so I've collected some highlights of testimonials and feedback from my mentees recently. I'm just putting together some content. I'm going to drop that on LinkedIn. I'm mostly posting on there about anything professional. I'm open to people connecting and leaving a little message if they're interested in any mentoring. But I'll be making it a bit more public and open after this pilot scheme is done. Once I figure out a little like plan and structure for it too. It started off as an experiment, and it's become, it was just a bit of a pleasant surprise of how well it's gone. And I'm thinking about how to expand it potentially in the future too.
Kesh, as we draw towards the end of this interview, what would be advice that you'd give yourself before you started?
I wish I had asked questions about the industry I just stepped into, because you go in quite starry-eyed and you get given a brief for a big brand and you're like, whoa, this is totally different to university. I wish I knew what all the departments meant and I asked people about it, because I felt a bit lost for the first couple of years, and I feel a lot of designers do. for example, the big one is project managers and account handlers seem to be giving me the same information. I didn't know they were from different departments until somebody said, I'm a project manager, and somebody said, I'm an accountant. And I was like, hold on, but you're both telling me the same information and both putting a lot of pressure on me, like, what's the difference? But as you move up, you realize, well, one's timekeeping and budget keeping, and one is keeping on track of the work and the progress to be able to liaise with the client and communicate that effectively. That would have helped a lot. But similarly to that, the separation, the biggest shock actually for me, the separation between design and art direction when you go in, because when you're a student, you do it all and it's comfortable and it makes sense. You do your research, come up with some ideas, choose the best one after talking to your tutors and visualize and create. When you go in, all of a sudden, you're either coming up with ideas and stopping there and overseeing the creator, the maker, or you're a maker who's now no longer part of the ideation process, and that's heartbreaking when you figure that out, because you're like, that's one of the best parts, in equal parts to the executional aspect of it, and it confused me. And actually, going back to when I started, I was actually hired as a junior digital art director. And within a few weeks, I remember telling the ECD, who was a really nurturing mentor at the time, why can't I come up with ideas anymore? And he said, well, why can't I design anymore? Sorry. And he was like, oh, we've got you as an art director because your conceptual ability is really good. And I was like, yeah, but I miss making. And after the end of that discussion, I ended up shifting back into design, which I later regretted for different reasons. But I did a deal with him that I could be involved with the conceptual phases with the art directors as a more hybrid designer. And that was the beginning of my actual career. I was always sitting on the fence, and it can be done. So for those designers who are worried about being with this or that, you can own that hybrid space and be more of a conceptual designer. There's a demand for that at the moment as well. But bear in mind that you would probably be 2/3 predominantly employed to execute. But having that 1/3 luxury of ideation and collaboration makes the job perfect for me as a designer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more about what you were saying in terms of people that sit on the hybrid fence between art director and being on the tools designer. Having worked with a couple of those who, funnily enough, actually, it's funny you mentioned that, have previously been designers, like hardcore finished artwork designers, who have then done further education, pushed to get into that creative space, and now sit in a creative department, but then can also jump the fence and get on the tools and do stuff. I remember I had a brilliant art director that I worked with, and he came up with this brilliant concept that we're doing for lollies, which are sweets, by the way. They call them lollies here in Australia. But he then asked me for the media plan, and I was like, "What do you want this for?" He's like, "Oh, I'm just going to make sure my concept fits into everything." And he just sized everything in concept to just make sure to have that thorough, I guess, range of thinking. And you go like, "Wow, wow, oh wow, wow! This is the first time I've ever seen this, and this is great." So many times I've worked with other art directors who've gone, "Oh yeah, that'll be fine," and then studio will kind of figure out how that actually fits into the space that we bought, and then you kind of go, shit, maybe that doesn't quite work in that certain format and what have you. And I just love what you said there about people that can do a bit of both. It's you're worth your weight in gold in this industry.
Yeah, it comes in useful depending on your agency or studio. Like, some will appreciate it and some actually just stick to the process because it works and it's efficient, and you do come up with the goods. But then there are more fluid places which allow you to express yourself a bit more fully, and you get to do that. But back to one of the earlier points we were talking about at the beginning of the interview, understanding your neighboring departments. And not just neighboring, but just the broader spread of departments. Because the last department I engaged with, which my career just rocketed off after getting involved with, was strategy. It's the last place you think to go as a designer, because you think, I'm working with creative, I'm clearly talking to account handlers and project managers a lot. That's my bubble. Started talking to strategy and understanding how creative briefs are formed based on the client brief and that process. And then what should happen following the creative briefing, which is a bit you are aware of as a designer, but even then, you're not necessarily aware of how a pure creative team are briefed initially if you're not part of that dynamic. I think in some of the best places, the designer is a third wheel, they're third member of that creative team. They plug in at a certain point in time, but they should be aware of all that information to work towards that vision too.
Definitely.
And that's why I think more designers should talk to strategy. You'd be surprised at how well or how much more improved the output is when that happens. It's just an area of collaboration that's not really been tapped into properly yet.
That's it. Because you're not. I think there's this general, I guess, stereotype is that, you know, we think that it's a linear process, and it never is. It's an iterative process, and the output is all of our responsibility. Whether you're an account management, producer, project management, strategy, whatever, we're all creative people in a creative business achieving the same goal. So there's absolutely no harm in you going to, as you say, strategy and saying, well, why is that like that? Why are we doing this? And then who knows what sort of gold it might unearth in those conversations, right?
That's exactly it. Why are we doing this? It doesn't necessarily come through in a design briefing. It's more difficult we need to produce. And all those conversations have happened before that point. But if you do know that, it changes your perspective of what's happening completely. So I think it's a little bit underrated. It's starting to happen more. But the more designers kind of clock on to the fact that you can get more information about context up front before you even start designing, it will change the output completely. I think it'll be a lot more refined and pointed.
Awesome, Rakesh. I'll pop your LinkedIn and your website in the notes of this YouTube video as well, so that people can get to you easily. But I'll also cite you at the front of the video too. But Rakesh, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been extremely fruitful. I'm not even someone from a design background, and I've loved every minute of this. So thank you so much for coming on.
Amazing, no problem.